We start.
Good morning. This is Lightcast TV. I am Ninja Lawor Kolek.
And I am Martin.
And on to the breaking news to our former Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, claims unknown people in unmarked cars trailing him, expresses fear over his security. This comes after he posted some very, very iconic message on Facebook, letting the public know that there has been surveillance on him by unknown assailants. And I will read and quote verbatim what he said. Security agents in unmarked cars have been following me wherever I go. They are parking at the entrance of my Nairobi residence, taking note of all my visitors, and they trail me whenever I leave the house, even all the way to my rural home in Nyeri. Last Sunday, the below saloon car that was parked at the entrance to my residence trailed me to PCA Kirarapon Church, followed me to where I went for a late lunch, and back to the house. Upon checking the NTCA portal, I noticed that the number plates are registered to a lorry. This surveillance and intimidation of Kenyans was last witnessed during the era of the dreaded special branch, during the 24 years of Moi's misrule. In this era of extrajudicial killings, forced abductions, and disappearances by state agents, I have thought it important to share with Kenyans the harassment and intimidation I'm going through and inform them to hold the state responsible if I am harmed by state agents. I request the state to leave me alone. You hounded me out of office, and you should now allow me to enjoy my peace as a private citizen. Remembering what happened back last month?
Yeah, the same accusation actually said that his life was in danger. That's 1 month ago after he was admitted at the hospital during his impeachment hearing at the Senate. So I guess maybe it's time for it's time. Maybe the things that Raila Odinga used to go through, and right now it's like the guns are pointed back at him. What do you think?
The tables have turned. I remember very well the way the former opposition leader Raila Amolo Odinga, who is now in a broad-based government, how he was hounded by those same vehicles during the times of demonstrations and mandamanos. People are looking for him left, right, and center, and he could not be found. And it seems like the person who was propagating the same thing was in the government then is now crying foul that now he is being hounded by the same people that he worked with. And so it's interesting to see this turn of events. The tables have turned.
Yeah.
But honestly, to be honest, I don't actually support what is happening to him. What Rigathi Gachagua and the government that he was in before did to Raila Amolo Odinga and other opposition leaders during the mandamanos was not fair.
Yeah.
And equally, what is happening to him right now is not fair. And I think that the civil society, there is only so much that they can do. I think it's about time that Kenyans rise up and call the government to order and ensure that every individual, whether you are in the opposition, whether you are working for the government, whether you are not working for the government, and whether you are a private citizen, that you should be given equal amount of security, and you're not supposed to go through the surveillance and intimidation that some of the Kenyans are going through. Rigathi Gachagua has reiterated that back in the days of Moi, so he knew about the special branch. during the 24 years of Moi's misrule. So that is
Of course,
something that he knew about.
it was a deal. So if there are people that were used back then by the Moi regime, maybe to reign terror, if I can put it that way, to the common wananchi or the criticizers of Moi's government, were the DOs and the chiefs, because Moi couldn't reach maybe physically to pale mashinani, you understand? So the only representatives of pale walikuwa machiefs ama dio. So those are the people that were close to the common wananchi. So if for example hiyo uoga ilikuwa that era was there, such that even if you are at your own house, you can't have that, you didn't have that comfort of mentioning Moi's name. It was like they used to say that the walls have ears, or the walls are listening, and what could unapata, maybe you could, because those days kulikuwa na many cases of arrests, you understand. So I guess Gachagua understands maybe how Moi worked more, and even they were both in Moi's government with Ruto back then, but maybe Ruto was more he was more experienced in running the issue to do with the government, because maybe he was close to Moi. So it's the same things that na complain about are the same things Raila used to complain about back then. And you remember even the time that Raila was securities was withdrawn, he actually came out and Gachagua came out and condemned Raila, saying that if you don't want security to be withdrawn, you just have to be silent and comply with maybe what the government is doing. So this just the tables turning to him. I'm not saying that Simone Uruma, but to some extent, that this serves maybe as a reminder to like every Kenyan who is has power or who is in leadership right now, should know that these things are turning. Tables turn, and it's not like a new thing. Tables do turn since time immemorial, even the times of the Bible. Understand? Tables used to turn. Like when you are in a place of power, where you can command some things. You remember even during the Azimio maandamanos, and there was this time that Ruto traveled outside Kenya. You remember? And Gachagua was the commander in chief, like in holding in President Ruto's absence, and he said that actually there were things that happened that period that were related to him. They were like zilikuwa there are people saying that the stealing of goats or the sheep at Uhuru's Northlands farm was linked to him, to Gachagua. And Gachagua, you see, like those press briefing and those statements that Gachagua did during that period, pointed fingers at him. You understand? So he was like chest thumping. And you remember that statement that he told Raila back then that as in that you can see that he wasn't good in inaitwaje, hakuwa anaongea vizuri about the things that were happening, maybe forgetting that power is only temporary, or power is transient, as they say. What do you think?
Well, it's true what you have said, and the tables have turned, and this is not something that is exactly new to the population, not only in Kenya but globally.
Yeah.
When I think about what is happening to Rigathi Gachagua, there is something that has been there since independence.
Yeah.
If we go back in history, after the Mau Mau War and after the Second Lancaster House, where Raila's father spoke and decided that independence will not be possible as long as Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta at that time,
Yeah.
was detained. And so after the second Lancaster House Conference, it was agreed that all the detainees, the Kapenguria Six, you remember the Kapenguria Six?
Yeah.
And Kenyatta was one of the members of the Kapenguria Six. They were released in the year 1960.
Yeah.
Elections were done in the year 1963, and Kenyatta became the overall president, and KANU was the ruling party at the time.
Yeah.
And then in the year 1964, Kenya became a republic. Now the British relinquished all their leadership and powers to the Kenyans, to the Africans. And then, as we continued to look into the Kenyatta's leadership in history, we find that there are acts of extrajudicial killings and disappearances of prominent personalities then. You remember Rigathi Gachagua said to Uhuru Kenyatta in one of the rallies when he was campaigning for UDA to get into government in the year of 2022, just before the elections. And he said, and I quote verbatim, that usituue jinsi ambavyo baba yako aliua Jem Kariuki. So Jem Kariuki was one of the prominent personalities who served in the Kenyatta's government. I don't know in what capacity. I'm yet to do that research. He was one of the key elements who disappeared and was the extrajudicial killings was inflicted on him. Then we have the likes of Tom Mboya. Yes. Then we have the likes of, what's his name?
Robert
Ouko was another prominent personality, a very brilliant personality in the government, and they were ostracized by the government then. So it is not something new. And then we roll into the Moi's administration, and Moi's administration was more grotesque. It was more crude and abrasive because the acts of extrajudicial killings, torture, and murder of prominent personalities was paramount and rolled out, but they were hidden. During the time of Jomo Kenyatta and Moi, they tried to hide the fact that these people were actually a menace to the government then, and they did all they could to ensure that they were silenced. Right? So Moi was responsible for Raila's being held in capture for 9 years at Nyayo House. Plus Kenneth Matiba, who was released after a few years, but then he died because he was tortured he was tortured to death. And there are so many politicians, especially university students at that time, who were against the Moi regime. Immediately after the coup, Moi became something else. The coup of 1982, he became completely something else. He became totally totalitarian. He was like a dictator at that time. Whatever he said, I don't know how true that is, but I've heard rumors that during Moi's time, he would beat up the CSs. The cabinet ministers. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard
about the beating. It was more, the rumors is on the Jomo Kenyatta side. I always, even during my childhood, when we were in school, secondary or high school, we used to hear of saying that Jomo Kenyatta was the one, caning, if I can put it that way, caning non-performance ministers. If you are given docket and you are not delivering, unapokea viboko zako hapo. But the strategy of Moi used to work this way. Moi used to sack. Like if you are a non-performer, let's say for example you are on your way to a development project, maybe in Rift Valley. For example, let's say someone let's say like a CS, a minister, let's just say ukiwa unaenda kufanya kazi ya maendeleo huko mali kaa Turkana ama Rift Valley na umefutwa like like the escort, you understand, that ministerial escort used to leave you inakutoka. Let's say for example you have an escort of like 20 cars following you to the grounds and the security and everything. If you are sacked, let's say by 7 p.m. and you used to sack people through news, through KBC.
Well, that's very sad. Well,
Yeah,
I wanted.
so for example, before you proceed, so when you are sacked, like all the privileges and all the securities as a minister used to leave you. So let's say, for example, you are in Turkana and you have all the entourage allocated for you by the government. You used to, hata kama ni government car you are in, ulikuwa unatolewa, alafu all the things, all the escort, all the cars will go back to Nairobi. And now umebaki hapo as a person, as a very lonely and single person, trying to figure out how you will return to Nairobi.
Well, that's interesting because that would leave you to the masses and you'd become
Vulnerable.
very, very vulnerable to those who pray against you. I also wanted to go back to refer to a certain book written by George Orwell, 1984. 1984 is a masterpiece, a book that was written on rebellion and imprisonment, whereby the author was actually offering a chilling prophecy about the future.
Yeah.
You know, he was writing about this, but he did not know that what he was actually conceiving out of his mindset was something that was to roll out in the world, because we have heard of dictators from the likes of Nazi leader, this Nazi leader who was the Nazi leader who was
Notorious Nazi
who was
leader.
responsible for the Holocaust that killed 6 million Jews. Then we have the likes of Stalin. We have the likes of African leaders who are known to be dictators, like Mobutu Sese Seko. All these leaders, Idi Amin, wenye walikuja tu, the first leaders in Africa, Abdel Nasser, all these leaders became dictators. And so this 1984 is a book that talks about how a government will do anything, will say anything to control the narrative of the people. And so the author of this book was actually trying to warn us that it is very very wrong for the government to have too much power. So one of the most significant lessons is the peril of allowing a government to have too much power. So the government was referred to as the party in that book and regulated everything from the media to the language people used. At that time, according to the book, the citizens had no privacy and were under constant surveillance by the government. The same way Gachagua is purporting that the government is watching him, surveilling him, the same way that he has described in the social media and putting the message out there and letting people know that gava inamfuata is the same thing that was written in the year 1984 by George Orwell, citing the fact that allowing a government to have too much power whereby they control information and relegate propaganda to the people and hide the truth, they regulate the media, they regulate the language, and you're not supposed to criticize the government. I think that sets a dangerous precedence. And yet, you remember that when 2022 elections, most people can actually narrate and relive the fact that regarding Gachagua and the president, who is the current president of the Republic of Kenya, the fifth Ruto, the fifth, These are school masters from the University of the second president of Kenya, um, Daniel Arap Moi. They learned from the best, and I think what they learned is actually something that is being practiced by Ruto himself. He actually knows what he is doing, and he's doing his very best to hide under the covers. But right now, he doesn't seem to realize that we're not living in the era of dictatorship. We are living in the era of democracy. We are living in the era of social media, in the era of information, whereby you cannot hide anything that you're doing under closed doors and expect it to run. And yet it is something that is alluded to extrajudicial killings or graft.
Yeah. Yeah, so just to sample a few comments here on X. See X and where Wazalendo reside from. So you have Delo saying nikisikia ukilalamika. Let's go to another comment. When we were out in the street demonstrating and also getting abducted into service in broad daylight, why were you so quiet? Why is it so different now that you are letting us know, Mr. Rigathi Gachagua? And we have another person that's saying the two wrongs you see, but keep quiet about today because they don't directly affect you, are the same wrongs you wish somebody would speak about tomorrow when they do affect you. Very true. Na mwingine anasema Dida anasema wewe wacha kenye kinakutendekea kikutendekee. Nikikumbuka kondoo za Uhuru, let what is happening to you go to the bottom of himself. Aspirin for aspirin just served a later date. Kuna mwingine anasema I have no words. In fact, I have tears, neither for you nor for me. I have tears for poor Kenyans who can't afford a meal or pay school fees. The ones who are unemployed, the ones who are being sold abroad as slaves. I'm not brave. That's a long post there. But to come and ask yourselves, if maybe, for example, the government would want to kill Gachagua or any politicians like Raila, and do you think? Because to me, if they wanted to, they would do even without this drama of being followed and those things. You understand? Is that the intention of the government to kill? Is it really the intention of the government to kill, or just I see it as something they want to, like kumpatia baridi? Understand? To intimidate him. Actually, is not actually to kill him, because they know the consequences of maybe taking that move and killing him. You understand? The same way they did Raila during the Azimio protests. They cannot. They are just maybe giving him that intimidation so that he takes a back seat and maybe akwe anyamazi mambo inaendelea, so that his influence will not maybe he will not have that influence to the people. So I guess I think you remember even in the times of Uhuru when Raila went and sworn himself pale kwa Uhuru Park. With the constitution, according to the constitution, that was a treasonous move, and maybe that current regime by then had the power to prosecute and maybe execute Raila Odinga, but we didn't see that happen, because you can use the chest, but it's better you use wisdom, because you see that person has influence, and you see, and that was the time that there used to be this talk of the Kenya to be split into two. So I guess maybe if they took that move even to arrest Raila and detain him, that move would spark that revolution of now we want two countries, Kenya one, Kenya
Yeah.
B. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that you're right by saying that the move to try that they would have tried to arrest Raila Amolo Odinga during the time of the Azimio protests would have sparked anarchy in the country,
Yeah.
and it would have made people to come together and go on a verge of do or die.
Yeah.
They want to face the state no matter what, and they would do or say anything to ensure that Raila Odinga, being a national leader, to be released. I think the same thing applies here. So Gachagua being under surveillance by the state, I think Ruto is also very careful.
Yeah.
I think he's just trying to let Gachagua know, as much as he's now loved by the Mount Kenya people,
He has all
he
the
just
power.
cannot do what he thinks he wants to do, and he cannot say just anything that he wants to say,
Yeah.
or he cannot speak big. You know, when he was in the government, the way he would be a careless talker. So maybe this is a way of trying to tame him and trying to let him know that power is transient and that he was in power for a very short time, and in a very short time now he is out. I think it's a way of trying to bring him down. And I think Rigathi Gachagua has read in between the lines, because he now, for the 2 years that he has worked with Ruto, I think he knows what he is all about, and he is ready to face the music, no matter the consequence or how it will come about. But he has already made the boldest move of putting it out on social media and letting them know that actually, if anything happens to me, mujue ni Ruto's government that is out that has done this. So if anything happens, then blame it on the government. I think, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much for tuning in. If you can tell us what you think about the issue on the comment section, and if you're watching on Facebook, kindly follow Lightcast TV Kenya on Facebook, and also on TikTok, Lightcast TV Kenya. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can comment with what you think of this at the comment section hapo, and yeah, help us by liking this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Lightcast TV Kenya. See you on the next video.